Good morning, everybody. Who's your daddy? It's January 20th, 2014. Boy, so I watched my video yesterday. Watched it a couple times during the day. That was a terrible, terrible video. Thank you for not, ripping me apart. I was so tired and so, down and talking slow and too quietly. It was terrible. So I'm making up for it by talking extra loud and fast today. So I didn't actually feel as terrible as I seemed yesterday. It was actually a pretty good, pretty productive day. ZC Bolger and I did an interview for a podcast about Midrealm, and it was really, really awesome. I'll share the link as soon as it's available. And then I had my We Make Movies podcast in the afternoon, which was also great. It was all very good. But I was way too tired to write. Every time I sat down and tried to write, it was just like a whole unproductive slop. But this morning, I've already done a first hour and written 2,000 words. I'm not going to count that for yesterday's total. That's going to be on today. But today is getting off to a better start already. Even though, haha, my son has chickenpox now, and so I'm going to have to be watching him half the day and trading off with my roommate the other half of the day and watching her kid, and it's a whole big thing. Today I wanted to answer a question from YouTube commenter and Google Plus friend C. Valentino, who said, "Good video with good points. I collaborate with another author on a series, and we have completely different issues, but we do get that kind of sanity check for each other when we are working. When you write with Zach, how are you guys doing it technically? Working the same doc, talking as you are writing, etc.? Process? Thanks." That's a totally awesome question, and something that we have talked about before on our podcast, but again, this is not the podcast. I have to keep reminding myself of that because I keep talking about or almost talking about things and saying, when we talked about blah, 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 but the podcast and the vlog, two totally different things, probably going to end up with totally different audiences. Okay, so to answer your specific questions at the end, yes, we are working on the same document. No, we are not talking together as we are writing. God, no. When I write, I am locked in my room. It is silent. If my kids come upstairs and start making noise, I tell my wife that I need her to get them away. I kind of have to treat my writing space like my office, otherwise I will not get any work done, which, as you can tell, I already have enough of a problem with that. Process-wise, how it works is that Zach and I sit together and we figure out the story together. We figure out what's going to be happening. Like, taking Midrealm as an example, where, so we've got these 6 kids, and we define their characters, and what's going to first happen when they go over to Midrealm, and what's going to happen when the wizard shows up. Who is the wizard like? Da-da-da-da-da. How does that conversation go? What does he explain? He explains this in the conversation, but he does not explain this, because that's going to be explained later. Then they leave the thing, and there's this huge battle going on outside, and there's shadows fighting humans, and the humans are giving their lives to protect the kids, and just 5 minutes ago, the kids were just sitting in high school, and they're freaking out. And so they have to run across the battlefield, and Greystone is using magic and crap to protect them, and they're like, holy crap, magic and monsters and swords, why is all of this happening to us? And he throws them through a portal. Then on the other side of the portal, they're like, okay, I need just a little bit of an explanation, so let's... And then the wizard freezes time, and then he kind of explains a little bit of what's going on, but he's really old and crabby for reasons that they don't quite understand, but which will become clearer, not even in the first book, but later in the series. And then he takes them to these pillars, and they have to activate the pillars with the new magical powers that they have, which they didn't even know that they had, but now they do, and then they activate it, and the pillars turn into a barrier, and the barrier traps the shadows on the other side of the wall, and they're yelling at the kids, rawr, and then the wizard knocks them all out with a sleeping spell, and they fall to the grass unconscious, and wake up back on Earth. So that is figuring out the story on Realm Keepers Episode 1, and if you liked that, well, then you should totally go read Realm Keepers Episode 1, because it's totally free on Amazon and everywhere else. So then once we figure that out, Zach sits down and he actually writes it as an outline, and that's a line by line, maybe a sentence for every paragraph that's going to go into the final product of kids are at school and Sarah interacts with Raven and they used to be best friends, but now things are kind of icy between them. Raven is all goth-like and there needs to be a joke about her sitting in a tree and da-da-da-da-da. Things like that, just line by line by line. Then they go into the classroom. They sit down and Sarah starts to hear this whistling noise and she starts complaining about it. Calvin says it's not him. Blade definitely says it's not him. Raven is ignoring all of them, talking on her cell phone. And then Calvin passes out on his desk. Miles falls asleep on his desk. Sarah is trying to figure out what's going on and struggles to get to the door to warn a teacher, but she falls asleep before she can get to the door. That kind of line-by-line outline of here's what happens, then this happens, then this happens. And I sit down and I write the entire first draft, and that is just start to finish, here it is, I go, and it is the first draft of the book. So then I go through and I do my first editing pass, because usually by the time I've gotten to the end of writing the first draft, I have learned things earlier in the story that I didn't know were going to come into play before. So I go through and I fix that, and then I send it to Zach. Now, Zach does the first edit. He is a developmental editor in that he looks at it and he goes, well, this doesn't make sense. This is inconsistent. First we said this, this, then we said this, da-da-da-da-da. He fixes things like that. Sometimes he thinks up like new funny jokes. He's like, oh, Calvin should totally say this, and he does, and he puts it in, and he writes that all that down. Then it comes back to me, and I'm the final line editor / copy editor, where I go through, fix the language, make sure it's sounding beautiful the way I want it to, make sure that there's no grammar errors, commas are all in the right place, no spelling errors, because I'm like super really anal retentive about that kind of thing. And then after a couple more edit passes by me, I read it over, export the ebook, and we publish it. That's how it goes. It's a really, really awesome and fast process when I can actually get my writing time done, and the holidays followed by the illnesses with the kids, and then my own illness, and then tiredness, and all that sort of stuff is just like really sabotaging us right now. And that's actually probably why it's more annoying, is because I know how fast and how good we can be, and things are preventing that from going on right now. But not all is gloom and doom. It's actually kind of cool, you know, we're like progressing, and the story meetings that we've been having the last few days have been amazing. It is going to be the best episode of Realm Keepers ever. Way better than the finale of the first book, which I loved so much when we wrote it. So that's how our writing process worked, and I hope you found that educational and informative. And seriously, go check out Realm Keepers episode 1. It's really badass, and it's free. And if you like it, then you will like the rest of the series so much, I'm telling you. Okay, YouTubers, thanks very much for watching. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.